Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm here today talking about some big shifts and upcoming changes that we are going to have this week in the uh, in the in the zodiac. You see, this is Sunday, January 16th. In like 6 days, you will see that we will have had Venus is still retrograde. Mars will have gone into Sagittarius, and the Sun will have gone into Capricorn, and Mercury would be retrograde. So right now, none of those things are the case. Right now, we have Mars in Scorpio with Ketu. We have the Sun here in Sagittarius, and we have Mercury is not retrograde; it's in Capricorn. But it's still in Capricorn, but it's going direct. So this week we have a lot of shifts that are coming up, and so I'm just coming here today to talk about some of these things. Now, I also wanted to make sure people know that we do have the 2022 Vedic Astrology personal forecasts are done. I just put the link there. So if you haven't gotten the personal forecast yet, you can do that. You just go to, oh, wait a second, there's important shifts. Your personal forecast, oh, it's actually a different, actually, let me drop this in. It's the wrong link. I forgot to update it. Personal forecast is this one. Personal forecast is this one. It should be that link. And so, again, if you didn't get it for your personal forecast, it's really cool. And you can get it for all 12 zodiac signs, or you can just get it for your sign. And what I do is I analyze these 10 most important shifts, but just for your sign. So again, if you're a Virgo, then I talk about this Mercury 6 months in Earth signs for 2022, and Venus direct in Sagittarius at the end of the month for your sign. Obsessed with self-rejecting others, the nodes changing signs. So for each of these actually 10 shifts, I analyze it for each of the 12 signs. So whatever your sign is, you can either get the individual forecast or you can get all 12. So those are available, and they're available right away. As soon as you do it, you'll get the forecast. So go ahead and check that out. It's the personal forecast link there that I just dropped in. And so we'll take it from there. Now, right as it stands now, we're at a place of it's actually where the Sun is in Sagittarius today and until the 13th, and Mercury is direct still in Sagittarius. I'm sorry, in Capricorn. It hasn't went retrograde yet. So as it stands right now, the Sun is still here and Mercury is up here, but it's direct. So what's going to happen, especially on the 14th, on January 14th, what happens is the Sun moves into Capricorn and Mercury goes retrograde. So these are two pretty big shifts. The Sun moving into Capricorn is literally what's called Makar Sankranti. Sankranti is when the Sun moves into a sidereal zodiac sign, and Makara is the name for Capricorn. And those of you who understand or who know Indian holidays and things like that know that Makar Sankranti is a pretty big celebration. In many ways, it's kind of like the New Year. It's also falsely celebrated as the return of the light and something that should have been celebrated on the solstice. So it's originally a solstice celebration. That's what it's supposed to be. But due to the mistake of the zodiacs and not understanding the zodiac correctly, it's now celebrated when the Sun goes into sidereal Capricorn rather than tropical Capricorn. Again, and this is a big mistake with the zodiacs and the calendar. So the Indians got the zodiac right, but this part of the calendar got confused. the Indian calendar is a real hodgepodge of a lot of different things. It has Gregorian calendar dates smashed in with lunar cycles, and depending on if you're North India or South India. So it's really kind of a hodgepodge at this point, and all that's fine, but especially the mistake of Makara Sankranti, which in the ancient texts, what happened is when the sun went into sidereal Capricorn at a certain point, that was when the Sankranti, or that's when the solstice was celebrated, because the Sankranti was coincident with the solstice. But the precession of the equinoxes means that now it's drifted. So we had the winter solstice to about 24 days ago. That should have been really the Makar Sankranti, because it's a celebration of the northern course of the sun. So anyway, regardless, what it means is that January 14th, though, we're going to see a big shift, especially with the sun moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn. And this is a shift where our energy moves from the inspired and inspiring desire, to connect with higher purpose and whatnot of Sagittarius, and moves into the more concentrated, focused, determined energy of Capricorn. And so this shows a shifting of, where the things that inspire us, that align us with higher purpose. And of course, that includes things like our teachings and our gurus and our, what you would call our beliefs. Those things now require more effort, commitment, hard work, service, all of those virtues of Capricorn. And it also shows where the reality comes forth and how much those things that we say are so inspiring to us, those things that we say are so, elevating to us, those things also get revealed. Because again, if it's so inspiring and elevating to us, then we should have no problem making a commitment to them. If they're so inspiring, then we should be enthusiastic about working hard on them, right? So we notice literally how powerful the things are that inspire us also when the sun goes into Capricorn. Think of the best example is of a parent and a child, right? We're authentically inspired by the child, right? They authentically inspire us. So when we have to do all that hard work, which is the Capricorn thing, it actually brings out our greatness and brings out the greatness in our capacities. But it's because we're also serving. We're of service to that thing that inspires us. And that's the way it's supposed to be with our gurus and our teachings. Everybody's so hopeful and inspired about something until they have to actually work at it, and until life pushes them down, until all of that inspiration fails. Then what happens? Then they lose hope. They question, they doubt all of that. And so this is something to really watch for. This is a big shift that's happening. By the way, and Mercury going retrograde here in Capricorn also is going to be revealing this. Again, not to mention, we also have Saturn is in Capricorn, who is the ruler. So what winds up happening is, we get this quality of what's really inspiring after all. Hang on a second. What's really inspiring to us after all? Is it really these things that are just some excitable, oh, you're my teacher, you're my guru, I'm so excited. And then when the teacher or the guru asks you to actually work hard, you just, you start to whine and cry. Because, and then wind up even blaming the guru, blaming the teacher because of the hard work that they are asking you to do. Right? So this is where there used to be a thing that said rubber meets the road, was a tire commercial back in the 70s, I think. It's very easy to be all inspired and jacked up when you don't have to do any work. This is where it gets tested. I see it all the time. People get inspired by hearing me talk, or I don't know, but with astrology in general, hear me talk, all like this. And then they're like, okay, yeah, I'll study with you. They study with you. Then they see that I'm a pretty demanding teacher. And then, oh, what? Just keep saying things that inspire me. Come on, keep inspiring me. I don't want to actually work. I want to actually learn it. I just want to keep being inspired by it. You know, of course, I see this surrounding my guru Amma and great gurus and teachers. We're all inspired by these things, but then are we willing to work at it, put it into practice so that it becomes a long-term, enduring quality of our character? And something that endures beyond just feeling hopeful and inspired. So this is a big shift that's coming this week. This is why I wanted to really bring this about, because then the sun is going to be in Capricorn from like January 14th or so until like the middle of February. And it'll be joined Saturn. Again, Mercury is also there, retrograde. So a big Saturn Capricorn shift is coming this week. We'll take a quick drink. So that's the thing to keep in mind. It's that principle of life, that principle that understands that it's easy to be inspired, but to really bring about greatness is going to take hard work. And also, see, we have Trudy Shea is here. She just graduated from my level 1 course. She said, I agree, it's all worth it. The exam was a long haul, but so much learning. Thank you for being you. Well, you're welcome for me being me. But yeah, that's right. This is why I have like certification courses and stuff. I also have courses that are, you know, just a weekend or something. But especially if people want to really learn it, that's set up there, and there's support and there's inspiration and there's teachings and contact, you know, enough there. But it's basically, you got to work at it. It's that's the way it works. You know, that's the only way that we really grow, is we have to commit and concentrate. So again, these are the great virtues of Capricorn. And it's also where the sun and Saturn and whatnot, they really tend to converge around these areas, because the sun and Saturn both are hardworking, ambitious, want to accomplish big things, and understand that the things that are worth having require work. Just as Debbie Carell just said, here's another one of my amazing level 1 graduate students. The things that are worth having require work. Think of everything you have that you've learned from, that's really the foundation of your life. Everything. Those have been the things that you've put the most time, effort, and energy into. And they haven't been the easiest. They're not the same thing. In fact, they track often, they don't have a parallel track at all. You know, I think, in fact, the comedian Jerry Seinfeld, of all people to bring up, right, said that, you know, we were asking about comedy and about writing jokes and all this stuff, of all the things, right? And Jerry Seinfeld, even like with his comedy, he was like, you know, they were asking him like it must be really fun to just, you know, write jokes and all, and blah, blah, blah. And like, how often do you think about writing jokes? Like, just when you're out in your life, in your world, you know, just living, does something just pop into your mind? Like, how do you think of this stuff? And he's like, I never stop thinking about it. He's like, everything I do, my whole life is me thinking if this could be a joke. If this could be a joke or a bit, is what they would call it, you know, a bit. And he's like, it's not fun at all. He said it's terribly hard work. I mean, not to say that, but he's like, what do you think, it's easy? Because they were saying, how do you remember all these jokes? I don't remember who was asking him. I think it was maybe Howard Stern. Jerry Seinfeld's a really good interview, especially when they start talking about things like how it comes up with jokes. I think it was a Howard Stern interview. And he's like, I'm just, Howard Stern's like, I'm just fascinated that you remember all of that you remember all those jokes. And Seinfeld is like, but what else do I have to do? He's like, this is what I do. I think of jokes. It's the only thing I have to do. And he's like, that must be fun. He's like, it's not. It's excruciating. It's hard work. Always working, always doubting, always questioning. I never stop. Every day, everything I do, I'm thinking, hey, could this be a joke? Could this be a bit? But the reason I bring it up too is because of the thing that he said. He said, it was a very deep philosophical thing. He said that, I think everybody needs to find that thing, that thing that is hard, that they're willing to do, that for some reason gives them pleasure, that difficult, hard thing. He almost said it's something like the thing they hate, but they love to do, or something like that. But it's the same principle. It's like, it's not that you hate it, but that it's a, like a labor of love is the simple term. But a labor of love, you can't forget the labor part, because the labor part is what it feels like most of the time. And these are things that are rewarding. They wind up being rewarding. And they and they show us things beyond just the expectation that we're going to be happy all the time. You hear me talk about this a lot, of course. All spiritual teachers do that. It's not, we're not just here to enjoy everything, but, especially our spiritual progress isn't just an emotion. It's not just something that's going to feel good. In fact, it often doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable. And again, pushing through that discomfort because it's worth it is Saturn and really Capricorn energy. On some level, that's the first thing we have to do, because we have to push through our emotional discomfort and our emotional stress and pressure and psychological pressure and fear of losing everything. This is what Capricorn is about. And we can see Saturn has been sitting here since early 2020. Many of us said, like myself, once we saw what COVID was going to bring, that it's like, all right, here it is. Here's Saturn and Capricorn. It's going to make us grow up. It's going to show how many of us are still big babies. It's going to show our fears. It's going to come in and reimagine all of our financial structures, all kinds of things like that. And it's going to make us kind of have to grow up and concentrate. And it's going to feel severe and intense, but we'll get through it. And in many ways, those who have that willingness to be of service and to be humble will actually flourish in a lot of ways, because we're going to have a lot more time on our hands. We're going to have a lot more solitude possible. I just did a recent update on life after COVID and this year and these themes, very important. And so again, now the sun going through there for that month, January 14th until, and that'll be until around the same date in February. It'll be, get the exact date, February 16th, maybe. Oh, no, February 13th. So it's like 30 days. And while that's happening, it's going to pass over Saturn. So again, there'll be several other things that come up with that. It could mean the physical body gets tired. We even have things like gas and bloating and maybe sleeping a little more, right? With the sun join Saturn. So again, we also have that first Mercury retrograde that's starting on that same day. It's starting on January 14th. So again, January 14th, that's when Mercury turns retrograde at like 16 degrees of Capricorn. And it's, this Mercury retrograde it's going to be in Capricorn the whole time. And that's where we need to reflect on that story that we're telling ourselves. See, we already have Venus retrograde still. I've already talked about that quite a bit, where Venus is retrograde in Sagittarius. So we're reflecting on romance, romantic partners, lovers, disappointments with lovers, and illusions being shattered. Hopefully, we're also honest with ourselves about how we're also disappointing to them. We project onto them. We act phony. We do all kinds of stuff. The whole kind of thing that we do with Venus, talked about that quite a bit with that Venus in Sagittarius going retrograde now. But again, the Mercury retrograde, Mercury is really that story in our head that we're telling ourselves. What does all this mean? What does all this mean? That's the biggest thing. We're trying to get the story straight. And we're always telling ourselves these stories, just a matter of whether or not it's, how accurate the stories are. And in Capricorn, Mercury is really quite powerful because it's very practical. It's not prone to exaggeration. Mercury has some issues mainly in like Jupiter signs, Mars signs, where it gets frustrated, irritated, exaggerations. That's not really what we want with Mercury. With Mercury is where we're trying to just understand, okay, what's the truth here? What's real? Because if we don't know what's real, and especially if we're not willing to face the unpleasant truths or the mistakes that we are making based on our, illusions, then we're not going to change anything. We're not going to correct anything. We're not going to change much and all that. So Mercury is in Capricorn really going to, this retrograde cycle is going to break down that illusion pretty powerfully. But it's going to also, bring quite a bit of emotional pressure. As you see here on this page, one of the things that I analyze in the annual forecast is Mercury spending 6 months in Earth signs this year, right? 6 months in Earth signs. He'll be in Capricorn from January 1st until March 5th. So again, he started the year in Capricorn, and he's going to be there until early March. So again, that's a long cycle. He's been going into Capricorn, and then he goes backwards, then he goes forward again. Again, it's very grounding. Mercury is exalted in that grounding, earthy sign of Virgo. So this is a time for you to really get clear and slow down your thoughts. Instead of just having your thoughts racing everywhere, to become more introspective and to really ponder things and slow down more with them. Hang on for a second. It's hot here in San Diego, even though it's chilly in other places. Not hot, but a little thirsty here. I played some tennis today and thirst comes up. So, but the really that Mercury, when Mercury is in Earth signs, it really slows down the sort of jumping around, distracted quality of the mind and the intellect to just gather more details and not really comprehend them or understand them very well. This is really the downfall of Mercury in our mind and consciousness. So again, this is a really good time for things like studying. Those of you who study with me, it's a very good time for this study. When planets are retrograde, they're very powerful for that. Very powerful for studying, for introspecting, for internalizing the way you communicate, for listening. Really listen and notice the way you listen and notice what comes back to you. And notice how much what comes back to you is based on how you listen. For example, we talk and talk and talk and we don't listen. I know it's a big thing in my life. Sometimes I have to say the same thing like 100 times. Or you say something and people don't listen to it. They just regurgitate back what they thought, and you got to tell them 15 times. It's not what I said. It's not what I mean. If you want to listen, listen. If not, don't expect me to keep talking just because you don't want to listen and you want to keep saying the same thing over again. I don't want to do it. I'm tired of it. Do you want to listen or not? It's up to you. And so no, and I know that these poor listening skills is the origin of poor communication, because their mind is racing so fast about what they think and what they want to say or their triggers that they're not listening. And it's this is a big thing that stops us from moving forward, because again, we're also getting all of this feedback, all of the progress that you can make is coming at you. It's being beamed at you, the affirmation. But maybe you just don't want to hear it. You don't want to listen to it. No, I'm this person. I can only accomplish this. No. And that story is running and you're not listening to the things that can tell you different. And no one can tell you. People can say it a million times, but if you don't want to hear it, you're not going to hear it. Someone can sit there, for example, and talk to you like this. But let's say where you are, there's, a recording already playing at 10 decibels higher than anything I could ever say. Well, then you're not going to hear what I say because the noise in your head is already too high. And it's probably just playing old tapes, the greatest hits of how you'll never accomplish what you want, or how it's always going to be this way. And I'm the dummy, or you're the dummy, or see, mom was right, I am a failure. I don't know, whatever it is. The greatest hits. Because you're playing the greatest hits of why life sucks, or it's a conspiracy, or we're all going to die anyway, or what's the point of it all, or I don't know, whatever it is. You're running them over, and if they're louder than anything coming out here, you're not going to hear it. That's one version, but again, and then the way that shows up maybe in your regular life is maybe someone who is trying to communicate something else in that level, or maybe on any level. Let's say on a relationship level, someone really sees the greatness in you, and they really like, wow, you're amazing, and they really see that, and they tell you, you're not going to hear it. You're like, what do they know? I'm not amazing. I'm this person. And you'll believe it no matter what they say. And you'll project it. And you'll look for confirmation bias. You'll look for any little thing that you can interpret from them that proves, see, he thinks the same thing. And this is why he's also as bad as those ones whose story I'm still believing that happened 30 years ago. Notice how that works. And the person who isn't saying any of that might just be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I actually don't think that. I'm actually responding to some, like when there'll be a little disagreement or something. It's like, I'm not responding to any of that. All those triggers have nothing to do with this. There's just one thing right now that I'm talking about. That's all. I'm not talking about all that other stuff. For example. So again, we're carrying all these stories around. And so Mercury retrograde is really a good opportunity to try to get the stories straight, because we're just full of stories and pretty much all of them are wrong, no matter how you look at it, because ultimately Mercury is deeper than all the stories and all the interpretations. And it's, again, like kind of like a meta level. I just taught a whole course on this meta level of the planets. And for Mercury on that meta level, it's the story that's beyond the story, that's beyond the personal story. It's not just my personal story of this, my ideas about this, and what I say about it based on my story. There's a big meta level story that is, here's what's really going on. So pretty much every part of the other story is limiting. Okay, keep that in mind. Keep in mind that every micro level of every story is but a limited version of the real story, the meta story. Okay. Keep that in mind within every other story. So notice what I'm not talking about with Mercury retrograde. Don't sign contracts. Technology. Okay, there could be some of that too. You hear enough of that. I like to talk about it on a more real level. So the things that do get confused or confusing just have to do with Mercury. Like, again, your miscommunications will start to show up. You'll start to see them, probably even start seeing some of them now. Again, right before it, as Mercury is stationary retrograde, you'll start to see some things getting reversed or getting undone. You'll see, and you'll have to make a correction or an adjustment. You'll see other things like that show up. And they show how you communicate, how precise you are or were with certain details and communications and whatnot. So really notice these things now. And of course, all of the other stuff like with technologies or contracts or all that, I don't put a whole lot. I mean, it definitely, some of it can be true, especially with some details fouling up, but particularly if you're not good with those things. If you're just if you're not paying attention to all of those details, the same principle applies, right? Like, you should always be having some backup of data. You should always be having, again, even with your personal relationships, and awareness of these things I'm talking about. So if you're kind of sloppy with one, you can see the sloppiness with the other show up as well. So this is another thing that the Mercury retrograde does. So I'm always aware of how much my technologies and websites watch things like passwords and hacking things or whatnot. This is a big thing that we see now that comes up with Mercury retrograde, because we're so technology dependent, and all those details we have to keep track of. So Mercury will be retrograde here starting January 14th until about 3 weeks, until February 4th. Yeah, so January 14th until February 4th, we'll get that retrograde here. It's moving along. We're almost we're January 10th, so I don't want to push it along too fast. The other thing that you see here is I have this Mars. This is on the 16th. I'm showing you where Mars, by the 16th, Mars will have gone into Sagittarius. And as it stands right now here on the 10th, Mars is about 25, about 26. But then in the next few days, he's going to be within what's called the Gandanta point on the 15th. So really on the 14th, 15th, 16th, while those same shifts are happening up here with the Sun and Mercury, we're going to have Mars also changing. One second. So we'll have Mars changing at that point. I can just do a quick thing here and show you. So it's going to be a lot of shifting there right at that time, sort of simultaneous. There it is. Is that it? No, I'll pull this up here. Yeah, there it is. Oh, it's the same day. What am I doing? Okay, that's the 16th. Okay, sorry, never mind. Yeah, so it's the same screenshot there, but it's so on like the 14th, 15th, Mars is like 1 degree here, about to pass over this section. So again, later this week, when any planets get in this what's called Gandanta point, which is the last degree between Scorpio and Sagittarius, the last degree of Scorpio, first degree of Sagittarius especially, it's quite unstable. And this one is unstable in that kind of, again, volatile, even potentially violent or, very explosive way. There's a sort of eruption quality. And we could even literally see things like eruptions or explosions, or, again, we have some very dangerous situations in Europe, particularly like with Russia and Ukraine and other volatile situations around the world. And again, later in the year, when the nodes change and then Mars joins and whatnot, I think I can see these things to as really being even more dialed up. But we might see some very volatile things here in the middle of this week, over the weekend, late this week, and into the weekend. It could be on many levels. We could see, in fact, we will see, you'll notice very heightened rhetoric, violent rhetoric, maybe some kind of, ghastly, now people do all kinds of crazy stuff, shooting people, mass shootings and all kinds of things. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some kind of shocking, violent activity the end of this week, especially 14, 15, 16 with Mars moving through this Gandanta point. Besides that part of it, this is really where that power and that concentrated power and effort of Scorpio, which is where Mars has been, and the power to concentrate our emotions and to go deeper than just the worldly quality of that, how we're sort of coming out of the other side. Again, and this is the real power of that explosive potential of Mars and Scorpio and whatnot. Isn't just to blow things up in the world or whatever, or just have it all be drama, because this is what it's like if we just live through our emotions. Then everything is just emotional drama. Everything is just getting triggered and paranoid and jealous and confrontational, which, by the way, of course, you need to watch that. This is real stuff, but that's been going on for the last several weeks. But as Mars moves through this Gandanta, again, that potential is there, but the deeper discipline, power, real strength, real concentrated strength is also there, is also ripe, and the potential is ripe for that as well. And so that takes the form of things like yoga and meditation and authentic spiritual practices, and on that level, and also taking on those challenges externally that scare you or that you might run from because you don't know how to handle your emotions around them or something like that, right? Mars moving from Scorpio into Sagittarius is that shift. Now, again, those couple of days when he's in that unreliable stage, that Gandanta, we could see the manifestation of these volatile potentials. But of course, those same potentials, when filtered through the consciousness and presence of a real spiritual person, not just someone who is emotional and acting like that's spiritual or whatever, but authentic spiritual, someone who has practices and who has been doing these things a long time, and who also sees that clarity and is elevated by that deep concentrated state. This can be a very powerful time, right? And again, that's a real thing for people who are doing the spiritual path and not just reading about it or getting all excited and disappointed and projecting everywhere about what they think the spiritual path is. If you know authentic spiritual path and authentic spiritual practice, then you know what I mean when I say that sometimes that the authentic spiritual strength comes when you're able to concentrate and be alone and be still and silent. And that's the thing you really crave. If that's really your nature, then all this concentrated Scorpio energy and moving through and into Sagittarius, this actually is great. It's really delivering the juice. It's really especially because it's been with Ketu, which is also really concentrated. And it's not interested in all this stuff in the world. Again, I don't know if you've been feeling that, but I certainly have with Mars as it's gone through Scorpio, particularly with Ketu there. What it means is it brings this awareness like, I don't want to get distracted by all these other things. Things are intense, but I'm also focused. And it's like I can feel the intensity and and I'm just going and I feel it. And it's helping me really concentrate and gather like that spiritual power. Again, that's what Mars is about. That's what Scorpio is about. That's what Ketu is about. That's what they're about. If you don't do that and you don't have that practice, then it's something else. Mars in Scorpio is like, oh, I can't sit still. I'm going to blame you. I'm going to fight with you. I'm going to feel like a victim here. I'm going to lash out everywhere. I'm going to be a baby and blame everybody because that's what it is. It's taking that potential and rather than externalizing it and lashing out and getting filled with drama and posting your Facebook meme about how victimized you are and how if men were just more this or that, your life would be great or whatever it might be. This is what I see. I see these manifestations everywhere. Of course, now it takes the form of the narcissist will blah, blah, but the goddess will blah, blah. Like, okay, great. So whatever it might be, this is the potential that the planets and the transits wake up. So moving through that juncture though is unsettling because what we're meant to do is we take that Mars and Scorpio energy and it goes from that place of stress and fear and worry and being triggered, it goes into Sagittarius, which is now we're looking to be inspired and to find higher purpose and find higher meaning and do something with it. And it'll be in Sagittarius, it's usually for about 6 weeks. It'll be in Sagittarius until February 26th. So again, that's like 40 days from the 16th until the 26th of February. But here's the thing, it's going to get quite diluted because it's going to cross over Venus. Venus is the thing that really distracts Mars, can make it very sexual, make it very, again, Venus is the thing that weakens Mars. And Mars weakens Venus, like they're opposite. So they wind up in a sort of tug of war. Mars, like I was just even talking about with that, I feel clear, I feel strong, I feel like I don't have to project out my strength. I don't need to reach out to try to feel comforted through this emotional whatever. But it gets near Venus, and then Venus is like, oh, but I want connection. And then the two energies get kind of blurred. So I'll talk about that later. I don't talk about everything every video, but for the most part, just talking about this transition of Mars through this Gandanta point, and then he'll be here until February 26th. But as you see, as he gets further along, he's going to get closer to Venus. Venus is retrograding toward him. So they're going to meet up here. And so in many ways, we're coming out of the intensity of Mars and Scorpio, going into the sort of hopeful quality, you might say, of Mars and Sagittarius. But then it gets quite diluted here pretty quickly with Venus, at least the clarity. And, Mars is kind of, for Sagittarius, is kind of like that, the sort of tip of the spear, you might say. Whereas Sagittarius is the bow, the archer, you could say with the bow. Mars is like the aim, like where are you aiming that arrow, or like the tip of the arrow that's going to pierce something, right? Jupiter maybe is the aim, you might say, because it's what you're aiming at. And then Mars is really kind of like the arrow itself. And so the arrow is going to run into Venus, which is kind of like, how beautiful the sunset looks while I'm focusing my arrow. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not so focused on the arrow. I'm focused on the pretty flowers and the pretty girl watching me holding the bow and arrow, or whatever the heck it might be. Now I'm looking at other things. I'm trying to enjoy and have it be fun and make me happy that I'm shooting a bow or whatever. So these energies sort of complicate and confuse each other when they line up, when they join. So I just wanted to make this update here to give an indication of this week and these big shifts that are happening. Again, really the big ones are the sun moving into Capricorn on the 14th on the same day that Mercury goes retrograde. So the 14th, that's the exact day. But again, you could even say on the 13th, the sun is in that last degree. So he's at what's called Sandhi. So the 13th, 14th, the sun is changing signs again. And then at the same time, Mars is changing signs as well on those same days. So especially 13, 14, 15, 16, Mars is still Gandanta. Those are going to be times when there's a lot of energy shifting and Mercury is turning retrograde. So this is why I looked, I'm like, oh, that's quite a lot of, when planets move into different signs, that's a lot of unreliable energy. They're like unpredictable. So with both Mars and the sun changing signs and Mercury changing direction, again, these are all similar principles, right? You're moving forward, then you're moving backward. And in between, there's also things where then there's hesitation. Well, am I forward or backward? For a while, and then it's stationary, which is what it is. Right now, Mercury is stationary. Even before he goes retrograde, he's just kind of stopped. It's like, all right, everything feels like it's kind of stopped. Then he eventually starts to go backward. But before then, he's not moving backward yet, but it's almost like, all right, I feel like I should be moving forward, but I'm not because I'm kind of stuck. And then in between two signs, similar kind of thing. Again, the best analogy for that Sandhi or in between two signs is that imagine if you're moving, right? Imagine you have to move at the beginning of the month. Well, think about how many days it actually takes when you're discombobulated. You're not really in the next place yet, and you're not really out of this place yet. You're just in a place with a bunch of boxes around you, waiting for that big day, and you're sleeping on boxes, and all your dishes are put away, and you're eating, at fast food or ramen noodles or something until you're actually, and then it's kind of like that in the new place too for a few days, right? So it's kind of like that when the planets also move from one sign into the next. But when they do it here, even with the Gandanta, when they move from the water sign to the fire sign, it's not just that the Rashi or the sign stops, but the nakshatra also is a clean break. And of course, this is because in Vedic astrology, the zodiac signs and the nakshatras line up. Aries and Ashwini are here. So that means that the beginning of Aries is also the beginning of the nakshatra Ashwini and the end of Revati. So that junction up here is a Gandanta. These other ones have a nakshatra that carries the energy through. This one has Kritika, this one has Mrigashira, this one has Purnavasu, and then here you have a break. Aslesha and Magha is a hard stop here. Then you have Uttar Falguni, Chitra, Vishaka, and then a break. There's no break between Mula or between Jeshta and Mula. One stops, one begins. So not only does the sign stop, but the nakshatra stops as well at these points. And again, this is very clear because in all the Vedic astrology text and astronomy text and whatnot, it clearly lines up Aries and Ashwini at the beginning. So no debating about this. And so, again, that's why it's more intense here when Mars changes, because you have Scorpio stops and Jeshta stops. And then Sagittarius begins and Mula begins. So it's like total hard stop. Here, even though Sagittarius ends and Capricorn begins, you still have Uttara Ashara, Nakshatra. See, Ush means Uttara Ashara. So Uttara Ashara starts at 2640 of Sagittarius and runs until 10 degrees of Capricorn. So this nakshatra itself shows the dual qualities of Sagittarius and Capricorn. It's where those inspiring teachings based on dharmic principles and universal principles ruled by the Vishwadevas, which is an aspect of Sagittarius, turn into the hard work, commitment, duty, effort of Capricorn. And so it shows how all those inspirations need to be brought into the realm of concentrated effort if it's going to actually be anything more than a bunch of crazy ideas, which is really kind of what a lot of people's spirituality is if they're not doing any practices. Think about it. And again, it's not to be insulting. Sometimes people think, sometimes I get comments like, you're so negative about everybody's spirituality. I'm sorry, I kind of am. It's sort of true. I'm not negative about spirituality, but the illusion, this is all I'm saying, is many people, they believe a lot of things or they have a lot of ideas and they're calling it spirituality, and it's not. Spirituality or practices. All of it is about practice. Nothing matters unless it's practice. But that's with everything in your life. Everything. Think about the person who talks about how much they love you and all these ideas, and yet they don't demonstrate it at all. They never do anything. They're just a bunch of ideas. Think about it. By the way, this is also relevant to what I was saying about Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. And the story, bunch of ideas about everything, ideas about this, ideas about that. Oh, I read this book, my spiritual practices. I read this and I read that and I read this. But again, you might even literally be reading where it says, sit down and meditate. And I read about sitting down and meditating. Well, did you actually meditate? No. Well, okay. Well, then you didn't do the practice. It's better to read about that or to do that. But the real practices, the practices are the only things that are real. Just like, again, we can read about, I'm going to read about healthy eating and good dieting and nutrition, and then I'm going to eat fast food. Well, then it doesn't benefit you. You have to do it, not just read about it or think about it and have it inspire you. So that's all I'm saying. And so again, that's what Uttarashada, this is important stuff, like right now. And we can see it right now. We can see this has been big shifts the last several years. Because Saturn has been grinding through these signs for the last 5 years. And we have a bunch of ideas and beliefs about things, including like the world and our country and politics and money and who the people are around, which was Saturn going through Sagittarius. Saturn going through Sagittarius was like the first 2.5, almost 3 years of Trump's first term in the White House. Almost happened exactly. In his first day in office, Saturn went into Sagittarius. And then right when we got to COVID and the end, that's when Saturn went into Capricorn. Just a little kind of time reference, how we have a bunch of beliefs about things, about people, about the world, our country, or all kinds of stuff we believe. And then Capricorn is showing you, but here's what's real. What you believe is not what's real. What you believe can help you, and it needs to help you because you need to understand and believe in the things that are true. But you don't really know they're true until you practice them. So again, that's the big shift right now between Sagittarius and Capricorn. This is the big kind of razor's edge, or the rubber meets the road kind of life lesson of a lot of the shifts. And we're going to feel it really big by the end of next week. By the time we're here next week, it's going to look like this, with Mars having just crossed over into Sagittarius and the Sun and Mercury, I should say the Sun at least firmly in Capricorn. Again, that means he's also with Saturn, and Mercury is now retrograde. So now we're having to really reflect and bring more discrimination to those things, not just a lot of ideas and a lot of data and this, but there's that, and I believe this and that, and there's this and that. It's all there. It's all, I get it. I understand. No, really, I get it. I don't practice any of it. I don't do anything. So keep these things in mind. And we'll just leave it at that. And again, just to say again, if you haven't gotten the 2022 forecast for your sign, I go through the 10 big shifts that the 10 big shifts that I talked about here, you can see them here at this site. The 10 big shifts that you have to know, all of these shifts, I talk about them based on your sign, right? I'll analyze these 10 shifts for your sign. Let me be your guide all year. I love that. No, you can go back because, again, as you see, this is throughout the year. Like, we start with the Mercury. I talk about all 3 Mercury retrograde cycles, and I talk about it for each sign. So, like, if you're Scorpio, I'll talk about it for you. If you're Sagittarius, I'll talk about all these Mercury cycles for you. Venus goes direct. This is January 29th. Then the nodes change March 19th. Then Jupiter moves into Pisces April 13th. Then Saturn moves to Aquarius from April 28th until July 12th. Again, this is going to mean something different for each of the 12 signs, right? Then, Mars, Rahu, very close from at the end of the summer, July 16th to August 10th. Then Saturn, Jupiter retrograde from July 28th until October. So you can see this takes you through the whole year. These are like the big cycles. There are other ones, but these are like the main ones that I focus on, the big, periods of time. Solar eclipse here. We also have this eclipse up here in Aries. We have the one in Libra. And then the end, we have a big Mars retrograde cycle from October 30th until the end of the year. So again, if you want to hear me talk about each of those things for Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, or all 12 signs, you can go ahead and do that. You just, click that. You can get all 12 right there. Or you can just click one of these, Capricorn, and it pops up. So it's very easy. It's delivered right away. So they're all, as soon as you do it, it gets sent to your email. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that as well. A lot of people obviously getting them now. And this week is going to be a big shift, a lot of big shifts here. Anytime Mars changes signs, the sun changes every 4 weeks. Mercury retrograde, of course, one of 3 times when he's going to be stationary retrograde. Mars, he's only going to pass through this Gandanta every couple years. The sun, again, every time the sun moves from Sagittarius into Capricorn, it's the pseudo Makara Sankranti. And but especially now, because they're also all joined Saturn. So Saturn has really got his hands around this, and Saturn has had his hands around us all for the last few years. So anyway, folks, nice to see people, and especially to see my students showing up, and we'll be in touch. Talk soon.